Hey, after we jog, we should get a Red Bull. You can get a Red Bull, I get a Red Bull. We could share a Red Bull.
Okay, that'd be really fun. That sounds like... I think I'd really...
Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 147 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. This week we're talking with Daily Wire staff writer Paul Bois. Paul covers pop culture for Ben Shapiro's website, but he's also busy crafting right-leaning comedy videos and some screenplays, too. We'll find out more about Paul's work, including his tough love for the faith-based film genre, in a minute. You know, I've been reading a lot about Curb Your Enthusiasm's new season, and HBO is framing the new series like it's the bravest show on TV, like, ever. The newest episodes find Larry saying the wrong things about transgender issues and other complicated matters. How brave, how bold. Does anyone think an HBO show is going to touch on these subjects in a way that'll question the left's groupthink? Not a chance. I'm going to guess he's going to be made to look pretty foolish, and maybe in some small way he'll learn the right attitude. Now, I don't want Larry David to be cruel to anyone on or off screen. What's clear, though, is that what's dangerous to Hollywood these days is merely another form of virtue signaling. And then there's We, the Internet TV. The irreverent YouTube channel goes where most comic outlets dare not tread. I gotta say, their only competition lately is the Babylon Bee, which does it better than anybody. But boy, We, the Internet comes pretty darn close. And their newest video, well, you gotta see it to believe it. The clip's titled, My 3-Year-Old Son is a Girl Now. And it's all about letting children dictate their lives any way they see fit. Here's a clip. Now, that's really brave. It's not attacking trans people, but it sure as heck questions parents who think their 3-year-old should be transitioning based on, well, a whim, a thought, something that crosses their mind. Now, remember when that Saved by the Bell alum Mario Lopez had to apologize for questioning that extreme act? And by extreme act, I mean a 3-year-old child being transitioned or being considered a new gender? Well, I remember that, and I bet you Lopez does too. He was practically canceled before he went on a brief apology tour, and the mob quieted down. Kind of wonder if this YouTube clip's going to be taken down at some point, maybe demonetized. I don't know. But the fact that I'm even thinking about that, and you know you are too, speaks volumes about where we are as a culture today. And now, here's the HiT Tweet of the Week. All right, I honor Bette Midler a lot on this spot. Way too much, really, but when she deserves it, what are you going to do? I can't deny reality. She stepped in it again this week after attempting some really pathetic humor at the expense of Rush Limbaugh. Now, as you probably know by now, Rush Limbaugh has been diagnosed with advanced lung cancer. He's in the fight of his life. But none of that matters to the not-so-divine Miss M, naturally. Now first, here's Rush's quote about the situation for context. I show no symptoms now. We have the greatest collection of doctors working on this. But each day that I'm gone, just know that I'll be thinking of you. You've been one of the greatest sources of inspiration in my life. And of course, by you, he means his audience. Here's Bette's tweet on the subject. I think he meant to say, you have been one of the greatest sources of revenue in my life. You're a sad, bitter old woman, Bette. If cancel culture had a soul, and it doesn't, it would take your career in a heartbeat.
Please subscribe to my daddy's podcast. If he gets 100 new listeners, he'll stop forcing me to record these spots.
My HiT tip of the week is The Feed. You know, a good buddy of mine recommended this show. I hadn't even heard of it. That's where we are as a culture. I'm an entertainment critic. Some shows just slide on by. There's just so much content out there. And I'm only 2 episodes in, but I'm intrigued and I certainly think it's good enough to recommend. Now, the show is set in just a smidge of the future, where humans are able to live with a social media service, kind of like Facebook, a little bit like Twitter, implanted in their heads. Then they can tap into it at any time. They've got these modules that record different memories. It's a very clever spin of what we have right now. And I guess it also makes our smartphone addiction obsolete. You don't need it. It's already in your head. And of course, there's a price to pay for all this goodness, right? Now, any show that has the great David Thewlis is a winner already. I love that actor. He is so underrated. He's great in everything. But I like the other people in the cast, too, including actors Nina Toussaint White and Guy Burnett. I haven't seen either of these 2 actors before, at least I haven't noticed them, but they're excellent. The whole cast is really good. No sort of bad actors here or bad casting decisions. Everyone is sharp and at the top of their games. But I like the concept here. It seems like it could be real, a little bit like those Black Mirror episodes, and I don't know, there's something very special about it. Now, I think the cliche here is you won't look at Facebook the same way again, but is that a bad thing? And this is a British show, and to me it seems like we're heading into thriller territory as the episodes go on, but I'm ready for it. I just love how the story overlaps with the real world. It feels a bit frightening at times, like we're out of control, and boy, does it feel prescient. The feed is available right now to stream on Amazon Prime.
You're listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
Paul Bois knows pop culture inside and out. Sure, he covers Hollywood news for the Daily Wire, but he spends his spare time penning screenplays on a variety of tough subjects. He's a man of faith who lets his values power his work, but he's not here to wag his finger at anyone, thank goodness. He's also adept at crafting comedy videos on a subject modern comedians often will avoid. Not him. You can see his work at Riot Act YouTube channel alongside Adam Yenzer, another HitCast veteran. In short, I'm not sure why it took so long to get Paul on the HitCast. Well, we're here to fix that this week, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Here's my chat with Daily Wire writer Paul Bois. Well, Paul, tell us a little bit about your work at the Daily Wire and how you see it as being different than other conservative outlets. Because I know I see it, but just as someone in the inside, as a staff writer, what's your perspective on not just your work, but all sort of the bigger picture?
I would say my work at the Daily Wire and the Daily Wire overall, what's different about other conservative outlets, I would say, is that it's allowed a very broad range of opinions to exist on there. I give Ben Shapiro a lot of credit for letting people on the Daily Wire platform speak their minds, sometimes often in disagreement with him, and it just feels like a very, very free-flowing platform. So on that front, I think the Daily Wire is very unique in that regard.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's, a lot of people on the right poke fun at the left for the uniformity, but sometimes we can fall into that trap as well. So clearly there are issues on both sides of the aisle. That's what, I guess, is where we all come along with our sort of lack of willingness to stretch. So that's good on the Daily Wire. I know in addition to your Daily Wire work, you write screenplays, you do comedy sketches, you've written some short films. When you're doing that kind of work today, are there maybe specific topics that you like to cover? Do you kind of bounce from genre to genre? What's kind of got your, I guess, what's the creative muse for you of late?
It's been an interesting road for me in that regard. I would say my number one inspiration, or the inspiration pool that I draw from, especially when I'm writing screenplays, not so much when I'm working on the comedy sketches with Adam Yenzer, is my Catholic faith, Catholic philosophy. I really love drawing from that well. I think there's so much rich drama, so many wonderful characters you can create with that. I really try to especially stay away from anything that's any political themes in my work. I mostly like to touch upon philosophical and faith themes in my work. On the front with working the comedy sketches with Adam, a lot of that, me getting into that, was I was just generally looking for platform of creativity to work at while I'm navigating my way in screenwriting and directing. And Adam himself has been a accomplished comedian. He works for Ellen DeGeneres, and he just wanted to also just create some quick and easy comedy sketches with the bare minimum resources that we had. So it became a very quality partnership.
Excellent. And by the way, Adam was a guest on our show just a few weeks ago. So if you want to check out more on Adam Yenser, you can find out a past episode of the HiTcast. You know, it's so funny. I talk to a lot of different people on this show for my website, and it's often right of center folks. And the one theme I get so often is, yeah, I don't want to get political with my work. It's almost like a badge of honor to say, hey, we're not political. We're just trying to entertain, maybe provoke some thoughts. It's just the kind of thing I've noticed over the years. I also want to, you and I talked off air, and you mentioned how you don't want to be a Hollywood conservative creator or even a Catholic creator. You just want to be an artist. Is that easier said than done these days, or do you find that maybe outside sources are trying to label you, stereotype you in those different categories?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily at a point in my career where I can be labeled in that regard. I mean, certainly my work with Riot Act and my work with Adam Yenser is very political in nature, but we try to approach everything, even that, which can be very political and certainly geared towards a conservative audience. We try to approach it with just trying to be very funny, at first. I mean, if it's not funny, we won't do it. And so, yeah, it is interesting in that regard. And I would say the tribalist nature of the political landscape right now, especially in the entertainment industry, it's very easy to get pigeonholed and get labeled as, oh, you're a conservative creator or you're a Catholic creator. But that has never, ever been my goal. My goal has always been, number one, to stick to the craft and create wonderful art. I, of course, draw from the well of especially my Catholic faith, but all of those are thoughts that go back, 2,000 years, that have been touched upon by various thinkers, various philosophers throughout centuries. And it's not something that's like here and now, a political moment that is going to be looked at 1,000 different ways 20 years from now. So, yeah, I really try to avoid that label, but I understand how easy it is to get slapped with that, especially in this environment.
Yeah. It actually reminds me a little bit of the clean comic label, and I guess Jim Gaffigan would fall into that category, but he's so good and so funny, it seems kind of superfluous even. But, one thing I want to ask you is I hear a lot of horror stories, and we talk about it on this podcast, about people who are right of center trying to navigate Hollywood and running into resistance, and maybe that's even an understatement. Just from your forays into the entertainment world, are you finding that? Is it sort of maybe not as scary as we think? What's been your sort of personal observations, either with your direct work or maybe even colleagues?
From everything that I've seen and experienced, it is not so – it's not – you can't swipe it with a broad brush, basically. I know for a fact that there are pockets of Hollywood that are very aggressive towards conservatives. If you were to be outed, you would probably face some blowback, especially in the age of Trump. But I do know that there are other pockets that the people there are predominantly left-leaning and predominantly liberal, but they don't give a hoot about which way you politically lean. Mostly because I think a lot of those people, they've worked really, really hard, and they value people who show up and work really hard and are good at their jobs. For instance, Adam Yenser is an open conservative, and he does fine working in an environment like the Ellen Show. And I know there are other people who also are openly conservative, and they do fine working on other projects in Hollywood as well. So I'm really trying my best not to paint a broad brush in an environment like Hollywood and just say that everybody who works there, everybody who's liberal and everybody who's left-leaning is automatically just going to be hateful and bigoted towards people who are conservative and trying to cast them out. I know those people exist, but they're not everyone, and I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that in a way is Nick Searcy, who's very political and very kind of pugilistic on Twitter, but he works all the time. And I think when you hear from his co-stars. They love him because he's hardworking, he's affable, he's not bringing his op-eds to the movie set. He just gets there and does the job and does it so well. So I think that's always the best approach. And then maybe if you want to
absolutely. I mean, I think we need to realize that at the end of the day, this is hard work. It's a job, and you have to be able to get along with people and work with people. And there are people who may, in many ways, jive with people's political opinions, but they're just awful people to work around. I would say the same thing if I had any level of power in Hollywood, if I had a production company, or if I was running a set, and there were conservatives or Catholics who just were awful people to be around, awful people to work with, and did not perform their jobs well on set, I wouldn't hire them. So that's the truth of the matter.
Yeah. I want to circle back real briefly to your screenplay work. Maybe just pick one, either something you're working on recently or one that you really feel attached to, and just describe it to us. Just give us a kind of a snapshot of what it is and what you'd like to see happen with it.
Well, that's a wonderful question. I mean, I've written 3 in the past 4 years, each varying degrees. I wrote a dark fantasy that was historical epic based. I wrote a sci-fi script, and I wrote a low budget thriller, and I'm also in the middle of working on another super low budget thriller right now. I would say the one that I'm probably most passionate about right now, it's the most accessible, and it's very much inspired by the time that I've worked at the Daily Wire. It's about an editor-in-chief at a website that's similar to BuzzFeed, similar to the Huffington Post, Daily Wire, and he finds out that among his staff is a rogue CIA operative that works for a shadow organization that's run kind of by like a George Soros figure. And what they do is they infiltrate media organizations, they manipulate them from the inside out, and they co-opt it to his propaganda machine. And so after finding that out, he hires a rogue MI6 agent to spy on his staff and hack their phones and their emails, and it becomes this game of cat and mouse to kind of uncover them, cover them all. So that's a really fun script. That's called The Syncretist. I wrote it about a year and a half ago, and I've been doing my best to try and get it off the ground.
Gotcha. I was going to, you and I think we have travel in similar circles in a way, and I think we both look at Hollywood and pop culture. Is there anything going on? We just entered 2020. Maybe a trend that is just bubbling up that really hasn't kind of caught fire yet, or maybe a story or theme that's not getting enough attention that you would like to talk about?
A story or theme in pop culture? Sure. I think from everything that I have discovered from people working in the industry, I think from celebrities, especially comedians, there is a growing backlash against cancel culture. There really is. And I think in the next few years, you're going to see it gets diminished severely, because I think people are really tired of it. I think it's frustrating for a lot of people. I think liberals are equally frustrated with it. It makes work difficult. It makes trying to formulate public figures very difficult. I mean, just look at what happened with Kevin Hart last year. I think that's really going to take a major hit, and I look forward to the death of cancel culture, and I think a lot of people are working to end it.
Well, that's good news. And just a quick note, I was listening to the fellow who creates Titania McGrath, who's like a sort of a woke parody on Twitter, and he said that he would write a tweet or two and have like a funny kind of riff on woke culture, and then about 2-3 weeks later, maybe 2-3 months later, it actually happened, something just like he described. So when the parody is, when real life is catching up to the parody, I think we may be reaching that moment. But
absolutely, and I think it will be especially true if Trump wins re-election, which I'm fairly confident he will. I really think that woke culture and purity culture, cancel culture, it will die a natural death. I think even people like Barack Obama is starting to realize that it's poison for the culture, poison for politics. They will try and kill it.
Gotcha. We're in an election year, and you cover politics, and you riff on some themes with your video work. Do you find extra inspiration by what's going on in the culture now, or does it make it even harder because every outlet's covering it, every outlet's making jokes about political figures? Where do you kind of take on that?
I think there's so much great material out there, so I think the sky's the limit with what we can do and what we can cover. I mean, there's just every day I'm on the phone with Adam, just talking about, well, how can we cover this angle? How can we hit this angle and make a joke about it? There's so many ways of attacking it, and I think the more the merrier. The more people that are out doing it is great. And I don't think there's a shortage of what we can do and what we can cover. There's just like, for instance, yesterday we were talking about, like, well, how can we cover the Iowa debacle? And then we were moving on to, well, maybe we can cover New Hampshire. And then I was looking up at a headline like at Barnes and Noble's, how they're going to create, or they shelved their plan to create diverse covers for classic books in the name of Black History Month. We talked about how can we do a sketch on that. So there's so many great things to draw from. So I'm happy with it.
Gotcha. On the HitCast, I used to end interviews with a simple question: what are you watching these days? What are you listening to? What books are on your bookshelves? And I'm not through with the questions yet, but I want to ask that one to you. Is there anything you're kind of consuming right now? And maybe not even the, mainstream, I saw Joker or something like that, but maybe something a little bit below the radar that you're enjoying on some level that you'd like to share?
Okay. That's a very good question. In terms of what I've been consuming right now, I've just been watching a lot of the Oscar-nominated films, and I have to say that I've been very, very impressed with what has come out this year. I think it's one of the better years of the decade that has now passed us. In terms of the movies that have come out, they feel a lot more cinematic, a lot less pretentious art house fare. I was especially enamored with 1917. I think I've watched it like 3 times now. I think it's a beautiful film. I think it's it's a deeper film than I think people have given it credit for. It's about persistence in the face of chaos. I thoroughly love 1917, in terms of the TV that I'm consuming, I'm trying to get into The Mandalorian right now. I got to tell you, it's not doing it for me. I'm 4 episodes in. I just feel bored. I think maybe I'm not a Star Wars guy. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at pop culturally in the media that I'm consuming. I really, in terms of something that's under the radar, not really. Okay,
no worries. Sometimes you gotta catch up with the zeitgeist and what's going on. And I think at this point, The Mandalorian, although I enjoyed the first few episodes, the hype is just over the moon. So it's even hard to kind of go into it now without expecting Star Wars, Return of the Jedi level kind of stuff. But Paul, one last question. There's been a lot of talk about making a Hollywood ecosystem that would be fair to people right of center or artists who don't get progressive with their messaging. And I understand you have a little bit of tough love to share about some of the right of center art that we have right here and now. Just before we let you go, talk a little bit about that. And I think tough love can be good love sometimes. So what are your thoughts on what you're seeing out there now?
Yes, I will try to be as charitable with this as I possibly can, but conservatives and Catholics and Christians that want to create culture need to understand that preaching to the choir and putting out on-the-nose messages and, frankly, using art as a propaganda tool is abysmal. I mean, first off, I think that as a Catholic, I think it's sloth. Personally, I think it is very wrong to be an artist and intentionally create something that's crap, something that's terrible, something that doesn't seek to really reach inside the human soul and inspire it and move it. So I think it's wrong there. I think it's exploitive. And that needs to end. I'm not going to point out any specifics here right now, but and it's very disconcerting to see that. I think it humiliates Christians and conservatives especially when they enact art like that. And so that needs to stop. And I think that if you want to be an artist, if you want to be a filmmaker in Hollywood, if you want to be any kind of artist, whether it be a musician or a painter, you have to seek to create amazing art first. You have to seek to create beauty. You have to seek to inspire and move the human emotion. And if you can't do that, then don't be an artist.
Interesting thoughts. I want to end with a little bit of positive energy. I think, at least from the faith-based world, you're looking at the films that are coming from that arena. I think things are improving. I think the craft is improving. I think it's a fairly young art form, you could say, and I've been very pleasantly surprised by some recent films. So I think as time marches on, if these same artists just keep at it and keep working and striving, and like you said, don't just preach to the choir, but also reach for everyone and touch all the lives. And I think we'll get there sooner than later. So
well, here's the thing. I mean, I think the like I said, I draw from my own Catholic faith when I'm creating my work, and the thing about faith and Christian themes especially, they're so rich with drama, so rich with emotion, so themselves, if you take them and you create these organic characters and these organic situations out of them, there's so much beauty to be found in that. So we already have this rich history of philosophy, these rich emotions. I mean, so many stories of saints that we can draw from, just use their situations as just jumping off points. And so we have so much on our side, but we really need to remember, that we're creating a craft at the end of the day. We can look at things like Notre Dame. We can look at the Vatican. We look at like all of Western Europe itself, and we just say, look at all these beautiful things that people created, and faith was their jumping off point. So we have it on our side. We need to get back to that.
Yeah. As a wise man once said, get her done. So I'll leave on that note. But Paul, thank you again for joining the HiTcast. You can read Paul's work at dailywire.com. Follow him on Twitter at Paul Bois 39. That's BOIS 39. And see him acting up in a very good way, of course, at the Riot Act YouTube channel. I'll have links to all the above on the show notes page at HollywoodInToto.com. Paul, keep up the work, and we will be talking with you soon about different projects, I am sure.
Great. Thank you so much, Christian. Have a great day.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out HollywoodInToto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at HollywoodInToto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.